Welcome to your daily dose of sci-fi adventures. New stories dropped every single day. Smash that subscribe button and ring the to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and unlock even more epic cosmic tales. Lieutenant Kieran Rell pivoted atop a fractured exoskeleton, heart thundering in sync with the artillery volleys that shuddered the ground beneath him. The battlefield of Row 9 was a crucible of ash and chrome, where once proud war machines lay, strewn like broken toys, twin suns, one searing gold, the other a dying ember, hung low in the violet sky, casting jagged shadows across cratered plains. Everywhere Kieran looked, the air shimmered with heat and the pulse of dying technology. Rel. Status, crackled Captain Arya Kess's voice through his comlink, even in the midst of chaos. Her tone remained calm, yielding steel beneath a mantle of silver. He sampled his last stim pack, down to the wire, deploying seeker drones. "Ma'am," he replied. With a flick of his wrist, 3 darting orbs launched skyward, scanning for enemy armor. Each drone's infrared eye painted fiery outlines against the gathering smoke. "Potential target on your 6. His visor tracked a charge of bioalloy. Emerging from the ruins, it moved with unnatural grace, no turreted weaponry, no rotor blades, just an elongated spear, its shaft of translucent crystal writhing like a living vine, and at its tip glowed a cluster of phosphorescent filaments. "Arya, get down," Kieran roared. But his warning came too late. A single pulse of alien energy detonated where she'd stood moments ago. The spear protruded from her chest with a hiss of sizzling plasma, its light pulsing in rhythm with her fading heartbeat. The world around him froze, then splintered into dissonant sound. Her armor cracked, blood dark as the void between stars spattered across the scorched earth. He dove, rolling beside her, fingers trembling as he brushed the helmet from her head. Her silver hair fanned out in the dust, framing her face like spun starlight. Arya's eyes, once sharp with command, swam with shock. She reached for him, hand trembling. "Kess, hang on." Kieran choked out, scanning the wound. The armor plating was fused to the crystalline spear, its edges glowing with bioenergy. Around them, the battlefields roared dim to a dull hum, as though the planet itself recoiled at the violation. "Don't," she croaked, voice ragged. "I can't." Her breath hitched. The spear's light flickered, each pulse synchronizing. With her labored breaths, he pressed a gauntleted hand over the beast of a weapon, searching her eyes for consent. "I won't lose you," he vowed, his jaw clenched. "Give me a count 3. She managed the faintest nod. "On 3. Kieran heaved. The spear slid free with a resonant shriek, and suddenly the aurora of alien light recoiled straight into his outstretched fingers. He staggered back, chest searing as the tendrils latched onto him, burrowing beneath his skin. He gasped, ivory, armor turning scarlet. The taste of his own blood flooded his mouth. Arya's hand flew to her chest. The agony was gone, replaced by a dizzy thrill of relief. Her eyes widened as she realized Kieran was the one trembling now, sweat mingling with blood as he sank to one knee. "Kieran," she whispered, voice laced with panic. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched his cheek. His eyes fluttered once, twice, then fixed on her. They glowed with the same ethereal light that had marked the spear. "I'm here," he managed, voice hollow. But the words were his salvation. She collapsed against him, tears mingling with grime. Behind them, the seeker drones chirped, multiple hostiles converging fast. Arya's breath caught, even wounded. Kieran raised a trembling hand, activating her personal shield generator. A crystalline dome shimmered around them, repelling the incoming onslaught of spider-like drones. Arya tightened her grip on his arm. "We need evac," she rasped, scanning the horizon until the shape of the HFY Odyssey dropped from orbitan. Arc of salvation among the dying stars. "Just hold on," she whispered, pressing a comm beacon into his chest. Moments later, a gravlift beam enveloped them both. Kieran exhaled a ragged sigh as the ground fell away. Aboard the Odyssey, medics swarmed. Arya refused to let go as they separated them, guided by cold professionalism. Monitors flickered. Kieran's vitals spiraled in and out of the red. The alien biocircuitry pulsed beneath his skin, a network of glowing filaments mapping the contours of his veins. Dr. Senevalric, her expression grim behind biogoggles, took Arya aside. Lieutenant Rel's condition is unstable. The symbiont from that spear has integrated with his physiology. It's rewriting his DNA. Arya's heart thundered. Can you reverse it? Valric shook her head. Not without risk. The bond is deeper than we've ever seen. She glanced back at Kieran's isolated bed. He might not survive the extraction. Arya's gaze hardened. Then we find another way. She clenched her fists until her knuckles whitened. In that moment, amid the antiseptic clang of the infirmary, she made a vow as fierce as any battle cry. She would save him no matter the cost. Later, when the storm of casualties had subsided and the infirmary lights dimmed, Arya slipped in past the guards. Kieran lay unconscious, the glow beneath his skin slowing to a faint pulse. She knelt beside him, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. The ships pressed against her ears like a silent witness to her guilt. You carried my death. For me, she murmured. Now I'll carry your life. Her voice trembled. Rest now, Lieutenant. I promise. We'll figure this out together. As she rose, the distant stars of Ronine's shattered moons glinted through the porthole. Somewhere beyond the endless dark lay the answers, a nexus of forbidden biotech, an ancient archive buried beneath alien soil. Arya squared her shoulders. The battle for Kieran's soul had just begun, and the path ahead would demand every ounce of Kurjesh possessed. Arya fought sleep like a traitor as she slipped through the narrow corridor toward the medical wing. The hum of the Odyssey's engines vibrated through her boots, a constant reminder that the ship was both sanctuary and prison. Each flickering panel light cast long shadows on the steel walls, shadows that seemed to whisper of the battlefield and of Kieran, lying among the injured in BIOLAB-7. Inside the chamber, the air smelled of antiseptic and ionized metal. Kieran lay on a raised biodable, his form swathed in diagnostic cables and glowing biocircuit probes tracing the maps of his veins. Where once his armor had shielded him, now the elephantine weight of guilt pressed on Arya's shoulders. She knelt beside him, eyes fixed on the data crescendos flickering across the holoscreen, heart rate unstable, septic feedback erratic, cellular integrity at 32% and falling. His physiology. Dr. Senna Valric murmured behind Arya, voice low with concern. The symbiont is everywhere. It's rewiring his mitochondria, reprogramming his white blood cells, even rewiring his neural pathways. By all rights, he should be in stasis. Valric shook her head. But instead, he's awake enough to burn through his reserves. He's dying of you. Arya's fingers closed over the back of Kieran's hand. The warmth beneath her touch pulsed in a rhythm that defied the readings, an echo of his unbroken will. Can we isolate the symbiont? She asked, voice tight. Separate him from it without extraction? Valric exhaled, pulling up a rotating holo model of nanoscopic filaments seeded through Kieran's bloodstream. The alloy symbionts. Neural tendrils have fused at the protein level. We'd need a targeted enzyme catalyst, something to undo the peptide bonds without fracturing his own. We have no template. She tapped the holo. Unless there's one in the Virelli archives on Ronine's moon. Arya's heart jolted. The archives, the biotech vault below the northern rift. Ancient Virelli lore says they stored every gene editing sequence they ever discovered. She rose, determination sharpening her features. Then that's where we go. We synthesize the inverse catalyst, inject it, and watch his cells revert. Valric hesitated, worry creasing her brow. The descent is perilous. The moon's tectonics are unstable. The rift's network reacts to biosignatures. You saw the vines on the surface. They'll entangle us. She met Arya's gaze. And if we fail, there's no coming back. Arya squared her shoulders. The memory of Kieran's sacrifice, of his pain becoming her salvation, drove a fire through her veins. I won't let him slip away, she said softly, even if it costs me everything. She turned away, boots echoing on the deck as she strode to the operations console. With a few precise commands, she highlighted the rift's coordinates and activated the long-range descent pods. Prep to teams. She ordered the bridge crew as alarms chimed softly. Medic specialists, exosuit techs, and Dr. Valric on my mark. Below the sterile hush of the biolab, Kieran's chest rose and fell in shallow rhythm. The holoprobes traced his veins like constellations newly formed. Somewhere beneath that silent glow, Arya knew, lay the blueprint to save him and to suffer for him in turn. As the Odyssey shuddered into descent, Arya vowed that the bond forged in war and sealed in blood would not be broken, not by alien symbiotes, not by collapsing moons, nor by the abyss of space itself. The SSV Odyssey groaned as it pierced Ronine's toxic atmosphere, its hull plating hissing under the onslaught of corrosive particulates. Lieutenant Commander Arya Kess stood at the viewport, her jaw clenched beneath the visor's glare. In her arms, she cradled the data crystal containing Dr. Valric's preliminary enzyme design, the only hope to sever the alloy symbiont. Without destroying Kieran, approaching drop zone, intoned Commander Thane over the comm. His voice carried both relief and tension. Surface winds are violent. We've cleared a narrow valley near the northern rift. Pod Bay is ready. Arya nodded. Scanning the violet dusk sky, jagged spires of biocrystal jutted from the landing area, the survivors of an eons-old biotech experiment. Each spire pulsated faintly, as if the moon itself was still alive. Team Alpha to Thane, she responded. We're green across the board. Launching in. Now, below. To drop pods streaked through the sky like burning comets. Inside her own cocoon shell, Arya's heart thrummed in sync with the pod's emergency thrusters. The descent was turbulent. Every jolt threatened to jar the precious crystal from her grip. When the pod slammed into the valley floor, she was flung forward, and the world spun. She righted herself in one fluid motion, shotgun drawn, boots crunching. On the radiating glass shards, beside her, Dr. Valric staggered free, carrying a portable synth lab strapped to her back. Crystals intact, Valric confirmed, voice shaky, but resolute. Let's move. Overhead, the sky roiled with swirling storm clouds, lit by distant lightning. The valley walls rose like carved ribs, leading to a yawning fissure at the far end, the entrance to the Virelli Rift. Tendrils of living fungus crept along the walls, each spore-bearing pod quivering as if alive. Arya lifted her visor's spectrum scanner. Life signs detected, she muttered, but they're not human. Spider-like biovehicles, half organic, half mechanical, scuttled across the crystalline floor, their mandibles clicking in unison. One lunged, and Arya's shotgun barked, scattering fragments of its shell. More emerged, snapping and screeching, drawn by the commotion. Cover me, Valric called, kneeling to unpack the synth lab. Arya fired burst after burst, each shot illuminating the alien forms with stomping blasts. While the monsters encircled them, she edged closer to the rift's gaping maw, scanning for anchoring points to deploy climbing cables. Valric's voice rose above the chaos. I've hacked the crystal matrix, the synthesizer's online. She slid the data crystal into a slot, and the synth lab whirred to life, neon strands weaving recombinant code. A soft hum pulsed through the air, resonating with the biovehicles. Their mandibles stilled, they regarded the synth lab as kin, taking advantage of the lull. Arya launched a grappling hook. Across the rift's lip, the cable snagged a protruding biocrystal stalagmite. She gripped the tether and yelled back, ascend. Now, Valric hauled the synth lab upward. Arya followed, boots scraping against living rock. At the rim, they paused, drawn to the swirling vortex beyond. A tunnel descended into the planets. Heart walls lined with glowing glyphs that pulsed in sequence, as though reciting an ancient liturgy of programmable life. Virelli Biotech Archive, Valric whispered. These glyphs store knowledge in their structure. They're a living GPU. Arya traced her finger along one symbolist spiral of luminescent vines, so the enzyme sequence might be encoded in the pattern itself. She peered deeper into the tunnel. The glyphs formed a spiraling staircase into the abyss. A violent tremor rocked the cavern. Dust and crystal shards rained down as the moon's unstable core shifted. They stumbled forward, forgoing caution. One misstep could send them plummeting into bottomless darkness. We need to reach the archive core before the chamber collapses, Arya shouted. Over her shoulder, move. They descended, guided by the flickering glyphs. Each step brought a rising hum, as though the archive itself sensed their presence. Shadows danced along the tunnel, forming phantoms of Virelli ancestors etched into the walls. Arya fought the urge to panic, each beat of her heart a drum of urgency. At last, the passage opened into a vast domed chamber. Bioluminescent vines snaked across the floor, converging on a central dais where the archive core hovered, an orb of crystal lattice, thrumming with pale blue light. Around it, biowood tendrils cradled its sphere, like a mother shielding her child. Valric exhaled. Awestruck, incredible, this is the heart of Virelli civilization. Arya circled the dais, scanning for security protocols. How do we extract the sequence without triggering a defense? Cascade. Valric produced a neural interface cable from her synth lab. This will link the lab's AI to the core's memory matrix. It'll isolate the enzyme blueprint and download it. With trembling hands, she plugged one end into the core's crystalline surface. Data streams flooded the chamber, holographic renditions of gene sequences, evolutionary diagrams, and biophysical properties swirling through the air. The orb's pulse quickened. The vines trembled as if in ecstasy. Got it, Valric exclaimed, snatching a data crystal from her pack. We have the inverse catalyst pattern. She held it aloft triumphantly. Suddenly, the cavern shuddered, violently, walls cracking, vines convulsing. The archive's hum turned to a roar. Defense protocols activated. The biowood tendrils lashed out, trying to reseal the chamber. The core's light flared, discharging waves of energy that scorched the mossy floor. Arya grabbed Valric's arm. Time to go. They sprinted back toward the tunnel. Chased by snapping vines and falling debris, the glyph-lit path fractured, glyphs dimming as the archive's systems overloaded. One final tremor sent the dais crashing downward, sealing the chamber's entrance in a cascade of crystalline debris. Arya and Valric hurtled through the collapsing tunnel, barely keeping ahead of the avalanche. When at last they burst through into the open valley, the sky had turned slate gray, and the ground beneath them quaked. Get to the pod, Arya shouted. Clutching the new data crystal, they dove into the pod's hatch just as the moon's surface ruptured behind them. The chance of reinsertion gone in a rain of crystal and fungus. The pod's boosters ignited, and they rocketed skyward. Below, the rift's maw sealed itself, entombing the archive core once more. Arya clutched the crystal to her chest, breath coming in ragged gasps. We did it, Valric panted. We actually did it. Arya closed her eyes, relief and exhaustion warring in her soul. Now, to save him. She stared past the viewport at the far horizon, where the Odyssey awaited. Above all else, she carried the weight of one promise, to bring Kieran Rel back from death, no matter how many worlds they'd cross to do it. The medbay's lights glowed with sterile urgency as Arya stepped through the sliding doors, the data crystal like a beacon of hope clutched tight in her gauntlet. Around her, Dr. Senna Valric and a cadre of bioengineers labored over nanosynthesizers, their faces etched with exhaustion and grim determination. At the center of it all lay Kieran Rel, his body a map of glowing filaments beneath translucent skin, each one quivering with the life and death of the alloy SYMBIONT. Arya approached his isolation chamber, voice unsteady but resolute. Show me the synthesis progress. Valric's fingers danced across a holoconsole. A three-dimensional strand of coated biopolymer Arya's catalyst rotated before them, its structure animated in pulsing cyan light. We replicated the inverse enzyme sequence from the Virelli archive, Valric reported. This catalyst will cleave the symbiont's peptide bonds and disengage its neural tendrils, but the reaction will generate a surge of metabolic byproducts. We need to infuse it slowly, or Kieran's myocardium won't withstand the shock. Arya nodded, steeling herself. I'll administer the first dose. She slid on medical gloves, heart hammering in the silence. Tell me when you're ready. Valric tapped controls and nodded. Now, a slender injector needle descended, connecting the biocatalyst reservoir to Kieran's central line. Arya watched the digital meters, the infusion rate calibrated to the millisecond. As the pale enzyme entered his veins, Kieran's chest rose in a tremor, eyes fluttering beneath closed lids. Monitors beeped in irregular rhythms, the green bars wavering. Rate stable, Valric announced, relief flickering in her eyes. Advancing to 50%. Arya held her breath, Every second felt like a lifetime. Kieran's eyelids cracked open, revealing storm-gray irises that searched the ceiling as if emerging from a dream. He murmured something inaudible, fingers curling in the sheet. "Keep going," Arya urged, voice choked. The enzyme's work began. The biocircuit filaments glowed brighter, then fragmented into motes of light, drifting through his bloodstream like dying fireflies. Each mote represented a severed bond, a step toward his freedom. Suddenly, alarms flared. The monitors switched red, his heart rate spiked. "He's overloading," Valric shouted. "Reduce the infusion now." Arya's hand shook as she hit the override. The infusion slowed, but Kieran's body convulsed, sweat beating on his forehead. He gasped, a raw sound of agony and triumph. The filaments flickered, retreating from his neural network, but his own neurons, starved of the symbiote's mingled energy, faltered in the sudden void. "His vitals are dropping," another medic cried. The heart rate monitor flatlined in a cruel, flat tone. Arya sank to her knees beside the chamber, pressing her palm against the glass as if she could push life back into him. Through sheer force of will, "Kieran," she whispered, tears slicking her cheeks, "stay with me, please." Beyond the barrier, his chest heaved one last time. His eyes found hers, panicked, apologetic, yet filled with love. He rasped, voice so faint she almost thought it was her own echo, "Worthoret." Then his hand relaxed, his eyes closed, silence engulfed them. Thicker than the vacuum of space, the monitors fell dark. The enzyme work had succeeded in cleaving every bond, but at the cost of his fragile heart. Arya's sob shattered the quiet as she pressed her forehead to the glass, tears mingling with her blood, traces of the battlefield still staining her skin. Dr. Valric knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Arya shook her head, words catching in her throat. "He saved me twice," she managed, first on row 9, then here. Her eyes lifted toward the data crystal still glowing on the console. "We have the sequence." His sacrifice wasn't in vain. Outside the medbay, the Odyssey's engines hummed with purpose. Through the porthole, the shattered moons of row 9 hung against the void, silent witnesses to their struggle. Arya rose, straightening her shoulders, grief hardening into resolve. She gathered the data crystal in both hands, voice firm. "We'll perfect this catalyst. We'll bring him back." Valric caught her gaze, nodding with fierce determination. Beyond them, the lab's monitors flickered back to life, ready to record every data point of Kieran's sacrifice. And in that moment, Arya's vow became destiny. She would unlock the Virelli's deepest secrets, bend biotech to her will, and traverse the farthest reaches of the cosmos to resurrect the man who had died to save her. For he had given his life, but left behind the key to transcending death, and she would not rest until he stood by her side. Once more among the stars,